breaking barriers and bridging the gaps between patients and doctors. Welcome to Brainstorming with the Docs and your co-hosts, Dr. Glenn Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Brainstorming with Dr. Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos. On this week's episode, we are going to break down some common misconceptions and myths and uses of one of the new hot topics that's been going around in the news, which is the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet's been around for years and years and years, has a lot of really, really good health benefits, but there's some certain circumstances and situations that you maybe want to be careful and cautious when you are going to utilize the ketogenic diet. So without further ado, and to get started, I'm going to introduce my counterpart, Dr. Harrison. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing great, Dr. Kolby. How are you doing this evening?
I can't complain. It's windy as heck here in Minnesota right now, and it's been raining for like 3 days. But
well, that's good.
There's supposed to be like a rainbow or something like that.
No snow yet, then.
No snow. It's all good as long as there's none of the white stuff yet. So
well, here in Denver, there's some snow in the mountains, but it is windy as heck. There's leaves everywhere. It's that time, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's the turning of the seasons for sure. So I'm excited about this today because I know that you use this regularly or semi-regularly in your practice, and you are really, really well educated on this as far as like when you would want to use the ketogenic diet, how long it takes you to get into the ketosis state when you start utilizing the ketogenic diet, and maybe what are some signs and symptoms of when you start going into ketosis. So why don't you go ahead and start breaking down the differences between like a standard diet and maybe what the ketogenic diet is.
Okay, great. So I guess the ketone diet, the ketogenic diet is it's the new fad. Just give it 5 years and there's going to be another new fad. Now, I don't want to knock the ketogenic diet because it has a place. But the truth is the ketogenic diet, all animals on the planet are using it. But before I get into that, the ketogenic diet is really where you're getting down your circulating blood sugar low enough for your body to start tapping into fat storage and burning fat for fuel. We all want it. We all want to burn fat for fuel, but it takes a little bit of work. And that's really the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is mostly made up of consuming more fats, a little bit less protein, and very minimal starchy carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates. That's reducing your overall circulating blood sugar, because when you eat these foods, your blood sugar goes up, and removing those foods, your blood sugar goes down, per se. I'm generalizing here, but you're getting less circulating blood sugar, and naturally you need, instead of using that easily accessible blood sugar as a form of fuel, you're tapping deeper into a form of fat storage. So the foods are keeping your blood sugar down, the different foods, and then you're getting into fat storage. And when you burn fat as a form of fuel, you produce these ketones, and they produce a lot of energy. But the ketogenic diet, just some history from it, or I guess some real life experiences, it's not a new diet. It is just nowadays in pop culture, we're tapping into it and we think it's all, it's everything. The ketogenic diet, animals use this all the time. Well, at least part of the year. So animals go into fat burning and then fat storing, fat burning and fat storing, depending on the season and what's available for them for food. So imagine, we always talk about maybe bears that go into hibernation. Well, they gain as much weight as they can in the fall and the summer. So when they go into hibernation, they're not eating as much or really eating anything, and they lean out. So during the summer, they're in a fat storing state, and then in the winter, when they're hibernating, they go into a fat burning state. But it's not just bears. It's all other animals that have less access to sweeter foods, starchier type roots and berries and all of these things. So the healthiest way to be in a ketogenic diet is to not be in it all the time. So if you hear ketogenic for life, that is absolutely madness. And we'll get into the problems with that, because when you avoid these starchier type vegetables and fruits and sweeter things and simple carbohydrates, what happens is you reduce your amount of biodiversity, your plant biodiversity, and then it can create gut problems. So ketogenic diets are great for short term, but if you want to mimic the rest of the animal kingdom, you go in it, you go out of it. You go in it and you go out of it.
Exactly. So even if you think about when he's talking about, nature using the ketogenic diet, the bear uses it, right? So the bear stacks up all this fat prior to hibernating. And then because the ketone bodies are like when you're in ketosis, right? Mm-hmm. The the bears are able to use those ketones to maintain their basal metabolic rate, which is basically the minimum amount of energy that they need to expend to survive during hibernation. Another animal that you can look at that's pretty common, like in both places where we live, is large game, elk, deer, whitetail. They fatten up, and then during the rut, they use all the fat. And then during the winter, whatever fat's left, that basically helps them ride out through the rest of the winter while the food is really, really scarce, and they're eating things like, small buds on the end of trees or bark or whatever. They're really having to dig for food. Like Dr. Glenn said, this isn't a new thing either. There's examples of the ketogenic diet being used to treat conditions such as like epilepsy going back to the 1950s. And it's interesting because it's all starting to come back around now. And they're starting to reuse this stuff that they used to use previously for the treatment of epilepsy, even today. So that's really interesting. There's some other really common health conditions that you can actually use the ketogenic diet to kind of help manage, or as like a co-management thing. A good example of this would be, we talked about when you're using the ketogenic diet, you're lowering the circulating blood sugar rate. When you look at something like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance and stuff like this, where it's all about extreme blood sugar fluctuations in the production of insulin. If you don't have these large swings in blood sugar because you're using ketone bodies for energy, then you look at the patient becoming overall more healthy, and they're going to lose weight because they're not having these big insulin surges as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So the ketogenic diet has its place. If we mimicked what the rest of the animal kingdom does by being in and out of it, we wouldn't have all the blood sugar problems and the metabolic problems that we do now. Even a lot of neurological problems. I know a lot of the things that you see, Dr. Kolby, working with neurology all the time. But I guess what really boils me is people come into the office and say, "Oh, I want to go on keto because I want to lose all this weight." And so maybe to debunk some common myths about keto is people going into wanting to go on a ketogenic diet and they're only going in it to lose weight. Well, you got to remember if you're holding on to a lot of weight, ketogenic diet can be very powerful, but if you go into it the wrong way, like 99% of the population, you run into problems. You'll get into what they call keto flus and sweats, and you'll get extremely dehydrated, and it can cause even liver failure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to look at that. I mean, that's a really, really common sign and symptoms of when you're going into ketosis, is they call it like the keto flu, where your electrolytes are out of balance and you literally develop like body aches, fever, fatigue, shakes. So yeah, you have to know what you're doing. Be careful when you're doing it. So
yeah. And if you're in a standard American diet, right, a SAD diet, we talked about this before, and you think you're just going to make a switch in a ketogenic diet, think again, because that's going to be usually much too aggressive on your body. It's trauma. So if you're eating the simple standard American diet, you're going to be eating simpler carbohydrates, a lot of breads, a lot of cereals, all of that, and grains, and then and sweets, not to forget sweets and everything else in our world. And then you have this massive high circulating form of blood sugar. Your body has been trained to only grab that blood sugar as a form of fuel.
Well, it's so simply absorbed, right?
Yeah.
So when he talks about the simple carbohydrates, that's literally just really, really simple, easily digested sugar. Your body can grab it readily, and there's literally no metabolic demand to grab it. So like it just gets chauffeured into your cells with insulin.
That's exactly right. So you end up with these insulin spikes, energy crashes, and all of that. But your body is trained only to access easily accessible circulating blood sugar as a form of fuel. So you're in sugar burning mode, nowhere near fat burning mode. And all this sugar that's high circulation, it goes in the form of fat. So that's why we have a weight problem. It's a blood sugar battle. And then you say, okay, body, I am not ever giving you anything that's going to bring up your blood sugar. Now you're going to start burning fat. And the body has no clue what to do. It's been trained only to work on sugar. So then when the blood sugar comes down, your body doesn't know how to tap into fat. And there's problems, energy crashes, fatigue. It's extremely stressful on the body. So the best way to do it is a gradual progression into like paleo diets and all of that first. And you give yourself time. So that's one thing. Keto for life is ridiculous. Don't even think that. The ones who do it the best is the animal kingdom. Like with everything else, we should try to mimic what they're doing, because after all, we are animals. That's one of the major common myths. Is there any other kind of myths that you hear in the office of Dr. Kolby about keto or when to use keto?
You know, there are certain people that maybe I would recommend that they really look into it strongly before they can consider doing it. And like you said, you don't want to go, I don't know if it's necessarily myth, but maybe a myth as far as like, you know, I've heard that it's really, really damaging. And there are instances where the ketogenic diet can actually be really damaging to people. This would be like type 1 diabetics, where they're actually, you know, have to regulate their blood sugar through injections of insulin. So if you are a type 1 diabetic, obviously really look into what you're getting yourself into. I just wanted to actually, when you were going through your whole thing, I thought it was super interesting because it just kind of popped in my head too. It's not super sustainable for you to think that I'm going to go from eating a certain way to going into eating another way. And we're not just talking because your body doesn't know how to go from metabolizing blood sugar to metabolizing ketones, but also because when you're eating these very simple carbohydrates or simple sugars or these very, manufactured foods, your brain is addicted to those. Mm-hmm. And they don't satisfy your hunger. So, you know, you're hungry, eat a Snickers. Well, that's not necessarily going to help because that sugar goes to your brain, but it doesn't register as you actually ingesting calories and it doesn't make you full. A lot of us are addicted to the foods we're eating. If you pull out every single one of those foods that you're eating, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm just going to eat healthy fats like avocados, bacon, nuts. I'm not going to eat any sort of sugar. You are going to go through withdrawals.
Oh yeah. And these
100%.
These withdrawals get amazingly terrible. I've seen depression. I've seen brain fog. I've seen even vision impairment change. Personalities change for at least a while. So don't stress your body like that. Yeah.
So if you're going to seek the ketogenic diet out, make sure that you're prepared. Slowly introduce your way into it. There's a lot of really good resources out there. You can Google this stuff. You guys are watching this, so you're obviously interested into it. Make sure that.
Oh, I was just going to say maybe we'll touch on a little bit how to implement or how to identify if you are in ketosis.
Right. So that's a good idea. So there are a couple ways of identifying if you're in ketosis, right? So one way is like they talk about, and this, I've never experienced this with any of my patients, but also I use more like objective measures where we use like the urine strips or the blood test, but they say that your breath will taste sweet, and that's because of acetone that's coming out through your breath. A good example of this happening is when like diabetics go into ketoacidosis. That's actually when you have an excess of ketone bodies. That's why type 1 diabetics and the ketogenic diet is maybe a little dicey and you really need to know what you're doing. But ketones in your breath or the sweet smelling breath, you can use urinary strips, which measure ketone bodies in your urine, or there's also like blood tests that you can
blood. Yeah, there's breath. What we do in our office is what we recommend is probably the urine test strips are probably the most easiest, the most convenient. You can buy them at most.
And they're cheapest, right? For like $100 or 100 of them for $10 or something like that.
Exactly. And then after you've been following it, however you get to it, you're not going to see your ketones throughout the day. Every time you pee on the urine strip, you might catch them in the morning initially, noon, or end of the day. So the ketone test strips are just to identify that if you are in ketosis or not. There's all sorts of, there's these fads of ketogenic salts and ketogenic proteins and ketogenic this and that and this and that. And I wouldn't fall into that stuff because some of them will help you produce ketones. But what the research is showing now, it's not if you're able to produce ketones, and those are like shortcuts to it. The benefits come from the ability to achieve ketosis, not just tricking and making these ketones come through your body. So the ability to, doing the hard work to achieve ketosis, that is where the benefits come from ketosis, not necessarily taking all these ketogenic salts and all those other powders and concoctions. And test your ketones throughout the day. If you don't get them right away, keep doing the regimen that you're doing and then recheck. But you have to check throughout the day.
Right. And like you talked about earlier too, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to move from like burning glucose to burning ketones in 2 days.
Yeah, it can take months.
I see it. You're going to have to check regularly and don't be frustrated if you don't get ketones in your urine right away because it might just take you a while.
Yeah, I've seen it can take months depending on the individual. And sometimes just the diet isn't enough. Sometimes you need to push your body. You got to introduce a workout. Sometimes you need to introduce a workout, then intermittent fasting, which is a whole nother thing.
Yep. I was just about to say, I use a lot
Yeah.
of intermittent fasting with my patients who want to go on the ketogenic diet. It can really springboard some stuff in there, but maybe we'll do a separate topic on
I think so. We could wind up on that one.
So obviously, if you guys have any more interest in the ketogenic diet, feel free to reach out to us. Excuse me. You can catch us at www.northlakeschiropractic.com or hit us up on Facebook, North Lakes Chiropractic and Functional Neurology. Dr. Glenn.
Yeah, same thing. You can probably, our website would be the best. That'd be www.drgharrison.com, or you can just Google Center of Functional Medicine Denver, and you'll hit our page, and there's all sorts of information on there. Learn about the keto diet. But remember, it's more of it's nothing new. It's being implemented.
So, all right, guys. Well, if you got any information that you found valuable, or you might want to share this with friends and family members, please do so. And obviously, stay tuned, because the next time I think we are going to break down SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's a condition that affects millions of Americans and people worldwide, actually. And yeah, we're going to break that down a little bit and maybe see if we can help some people out with that. So stay tuned.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Kolby. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.